Hello and welcome back to Honors Biology. So today we're starting our next unit. So we're starting talking about how does our body then make energy. So we talked about what are we made of, where does our energy come from, and that main unit is carbs, although we get some from lipids and then we get some from a little bit from protein. And then this nucleic acid structure here. So we talked about what we're made of, where's our energy come from, and then we just got done talking about how do these things get inside of our cells. So we eat carbs, great, but then how does that then get inside our cells to be used as energy? Talk about that. And now we're ready to talk about how does our body then turn that glucose, for example, into energy. Glucose is like the main energy currency. It's the main energy thing that we use. So we're now ready to talk about then how does that get made into energy. And really that's metabolism. That's what your metabolism is. It's being able to ingest things and turn that into energy. Now, before we talk about that process and how does it work, we have to talk about ATP. ATP, what ATP is it is the energy. So in our bodies, we can actually quantify, say, this is how much energy we get. And that's from ATP. So ATP is like the main energy currency in the cell. Okay, it's energy currency. This is where our energy comes from. This comes from ATP. ATP, what it stands for, is adenine triphosphate. So, and I'll show you, this is a space filling diagram. So this is more what it actually looks like inside your body, but I'll show you a simplified version. So adenine, so it's a base, it's a nitrogen base with a triphosphate with 3 phosphate groups. So I hope you see where I'm going with this. So it's adenine triphosphate. And it's organic, meaning that it's made by us. And then it's high energy. So these phosphate groups here, these other phosphate groups, have a lot of energy in them. And I'll talk more about what one has the highest amount of energy. But this is what it looks like. So here is that adenine base, which has nitrogen. So you could correctly classify it as a nitrogen containing base. It has a ribose sugar, so we talk about a 5-carbon sugar here, and then with 3 phosphate groups. This looks very, very familiar. And if you had to guess, hey, this looks a lot like a nucleic acid, you would be correct. ATP, it is a nucleic acid because it has the 3 parts of a nucleic acid. We have our base, right? We have our base here. We got our sugar, and then we instead of having just 1 phosphate group, we have 3 phosphate groups. That still classifies it as a nucleic acid. Nucleic acids just have to have at least 1 phosphate group. ATP has 3. All right. So it is a nucleic acid. So our energy currency is, in fact, nucleic acid. It's not a carb, it's not a lipid, it's not a protein, it's nucleic acid. So then let's talk about where does this energy come from? So, whoops, I gotta change back here. So then with the ATP, the energy, what it does is it comes from this right here. So we talked about bonding, right? So this is that simplified version of what I just showed you, right? So here's our adenine base, our nitrogen base, ribose sugar, and then our 3 phosphate groups. As we add phosphate, something really interesting happens. So this bond here has kind of low energy. There's not a lot of energy in this bond here. between the first phosphate and the second phosphate, there's quite a bit of energy there. But then between the second and the third phosphate, it has a high energy bond, meaning that there's a lot of energy stored right here in this bond. So if we break that bond, that's where we get our release of energy from. So this last bond here is what, where we get our energy from. So you may be asking, well, how do we break that bond? If your guess is hydrolysis, you would be correct. It's called ATP hydrolysis. Again, hydrolysis is we add water to break, water breaking. So here's our ATP molecule. We add water during the action. That water fits right here in between the second and the third phosphate, turning ATP, so the T stands for tri, into ADP. So ADP is adenine diphosphate. So we got ATP, adenine triphosphate, and ADP, adenine diphosphate. The difference between these two is the number of phosphates. ATP has 3 phosphates because of that tri in there, and ADP only has 2 phosphates because of the di. So, and then this is like how we get a lot of our energy, right? It's from breaking ATP into ADP. So, and then we also get a phosphate left over plus some energy. So that's how it works. Okay, we add hydrolysis, breaks it apart, all hunky-dory. So, but let's take it one step further. What do we need to break down ATP? Like, what is needed there? Well, we go back to our favorite friend. Yeah, we need an enzyme. So an enzyme is used to break us apart. Bringing it all back together. We're talking about carbs, talking about nucleic acids, we're talking about enzymes now. Yeah. Remember, you can't just forget these things we already talked about. You have to kind of keep it, in the back of your head. So ATP, it goes through, and then right here to change to ADP, it goes through hydrolysis at an enzyme. This enzyme is called ATP-ACE. That's what it's called, ATP-ACE, because the ASE ending designates the enzyme. So ATP is the molecule, and ATP-ACE is the enzyme that breaks down ATP. So that's how we break down ATP. But then what do we need to make ATP? Well, we actually need another enzyme. So we just reverse the process. So whereas ATP, we break off a phosphate to get ADP, to turn ADP into ATP, we just use an enzyme and we add a phosphate. This is referred to as ATP synthase. So ATP is made, goes through hydrolysis at ATP-ACE, then ADP, we get some energy here, and then we go through ATP synthase. So synthase means to make. So that's how it is. So if you were to look at this cycle, right, we start with ATP, we go through, we add ATP-ACE here, undergoes hydrolysis, we get ADP plus a phosphate, some energy is released, and then we get some energy from the food we eat, from glucose, to make ATP synthase. And that undergoes ATP synthase. Boom, and there's your cycle. This is a cycle because the energy released from the ATP is then used to make more ATP. Kind of weird when you think about it, but it's a cycle. So, okay, that's all hunky-dory. That's how it, a cycle works. But when is it made? Like, where in the body, when is it made? So it's during a process called cellular respiration, and we'll actually the next thing we're talking about is cellular respiration and how is that actually how is ATP actually made inside of our body. That's the next thing we're going to talk about is that. And cellular respiration takes place both in plants and in animals. So that's kind of where we're looking at next. So it's great, it's hunky dory, but then the question is, what does ATP do for you? Well, at the start, I said ATP is the energy currency of the cell. So anything that requires energy comes from ATP. So we talked, right? So from our last unit, we talked about active transport, right? The sodium potassium pumps, endocytosis, exocytosis. All of that requires energy. Okay, for enzymes even to work, they require energy. For your heart to beat, it requires energy. For you to walk, it requires energy. Right? Every part of every day, we're using energy, and that energy is from ATP. So when we say what does it do for you, we're not underestimating when we say it does everything for you. Because without ATP, we wouldn't even be alive. We need energy at every step of the way. From the moment we're born to the moment we die. Right? It does everything for you. So there you go. So that's all I got for ATP. That's it for ATP and ADP. So there is a worksheet to do with just 8 questions after watching this video. So make sure you do those 8 questions. And if you have questions about the questions, feel free to ask those in class or shoot me an email and I can help answer those. Other than that, have a great rest of your day. I wish you the best. I hope you're staying healthy. And I will see you all next time in class. Bye.